Two folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good, presented by Betches Media. Now we have a returning guest with us today. She's been on a bunch of times, and I always have a fantastic conversation with her that kind of helps unpack a little bit about the personalities and the behavior that we see on reality television. She is a ex-forensic therapist where she did personality profiling, psych assessments for ex-cons recently released from federal prison. She also is involved in neuroscience, neuroplasticity, and epigenetics, which led her to establish her private practice in 2010, where she coaches executives and celebrities as an executive leadership coach and integrative health professional. So the one and only Lauren Clayton is back with us today. Lauren, welcome back to the show.
It's so good to be back. Hi, Ryan.
I said a lot of big words there. How do you explain to the layperson what you do?
I have a master's degree in psychology. I'm classically trained in, regular classic therapy and how to do that. But I have switched my private practice to coaching because I have sessions with my clients, but I talk to my clients every day. So the healing and what we're working on, I'm dealing with it in real time, not just that 1 hour a week. So that's the biggest difference between just regular therapy and what I do with my one-on-one clients. And then with my course students, it's kind of the same thing. Like I'll walk them through the course but I'm talking to them all the time. Some of them have my number, but like anyone that's taken my course is welcome to DM me. And it's just more hands-on.
That seems like it's a lot. That could be a lot for you if you're that hands-on with so many people. And I guess that's what you study to be a professional. But I would be so horrible at that. And I was thinking, I always make you watch reality television, and we're going to talk a little bit about Southern Charm, Salt Lake City, and potentially some Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds in this. But I was thinking, because we've talked about Vanderpump Rules and Tom Sandoval and the men of Vanderpump in the past, do you watch any of these shows and like, oh, Craig Conover, I should work with him. I could help him. Do you ever get that feeling?
I do a lot with, anytime I watch reality TV because I'm under the lens of, when you do what I do, you're at a dinner at a party. Oh, are you analyzing me right now? Bitch, no, not now I am. But when I'm watching the shows, I am looking through that lens because I know that I'm preparing to talk to you about it. And, so yeah, in that case, I'd be like, oh, I would handle that differently. Or like, I don't know if you watched the reunion for Salt Lake, but Andy Cohen got some like therapy skills. He's like, okay, we need a safe word and we're going to let each other talk. It was making me laugh.
Bezos, Opa. Of course I watched. This is my professional line of work, Lauren. So of course I watched the reunion. I mean, I sometimes worry about Andy Cohen, and hopefully he has a good therapist because, talking about dealing with so many different personalities and then trying to make headway through all of their issues in a 3-part reunion, which I think he did rather deftly in Salt Lake City, but it's a lot because there's so many personalities. And I guess let's start with Salt Lake City before we get into the men, because I think we're going to get into a bit of a swamp when we get to Southern Charm and Paige and Craig. Is when you were watching Salt Lake City, what was your big takeaways from those women?
Oh gosh. There's so much. A lot happened. I can't remember a season of a Housewives. I'm trying to think, but where I cried, and I cried twice between Mary's son and everything that was going on. Cause I'm watching it and I'm like, he's on drugs. And I was thinking like, are they going to not? And then at the end, this big, really heartwarming thing. I mean, not that you ever want that to happen, but
yeah. I mean, well, and the thing that I was trying to tell the audience too is that just because we're talking about it openly doesn't mean that problem goes away. Is that this is something, when the cameras are off, they have to deal with this every day, 24/7. And it's not something you just wrap up in like a box like, oh, well, we dealt with that now. It's a lifelong commitment to sobriety or whatever that looks like for Robert Jr. and also for Mary, to have to find maybe different tools to be able to be a parent to him.
And one of the things that I was really impressed with Mary about is that she's very aware of her childhood trauma and how it's showing up in her life right now. And I think that this issue made her reflect on her parenting skills and how she grew up. And I don't know if a lot of people know, but addiction is often, in transgenerational trauma, which means trauma is passed down through the generations, addiction is often that trauma trying to be expressed and trying to be healed. And you can see that happening in real time between Robert and Mary, because it's kind of like, oh, and it brought their relationship closer. They had like really open communication, and, you know, Mary was very supportive of this whole thing. And then she's like, yeah, and then I have to let him also, you know, individuate a little bit and come back into society, like after the 30-day rehab thing. And it's kind of like, there's that balance of it. So it is, addiction can be an opportunity for like real growth in a relationship if both parties want to, you know, heal in a certain way. Because the codependent, or the person that could be enabling it, it needs to shift, and also the addict needs to want to shift. So I thought it was great.
I mean, that's the thing, is that the addict has to want to shift. And that is such a hard thing, because, you know, your mind, you know, so I always talk about that concept of our minds lie to us. It'll just, you know, or it can be with like just negative thoughts, or even just cravings of a drug or alcohol, saying, you know what, it would be better if you drank a gallon of vodka right now. And I think that's such a personal journey that sometimes I get nervous about them showing that on reality TV, but I thought they handled this fairly well. And I don't know if you watched older seasons of Salt Lake, but all of a sudden this season, Mary seemed like a person that we could all relate to. She seemed, you know, she might misspeak here and there, but it was somebody that we were all of a sudden rooting for, when she's almost portrayed herself as a villain in earlier seasons of this show. Is there something of, you know, where the cameras, I mean, like, how do you think this was just a pivotal time in Mary's life, and that's why we're seeing her in a different light?
Yeah, I think that she softened. And I think that when you have something like this happen to your family, and I mean, really, like, they're each other's everything. They say it on the show. Robert says that about his mom, Mary, that it's like, I just live for you. And then she says the same thing about him. So, and it's your only child. It's like nothing else matters. And so I think that she was able to soften in a lot of other ways and really put things in perspective.
It's weird. I was talking to Jason Waller. I don't know if you ever used to watch The Hills back in the day, that MTV reality show, but he has a really interesting story about his addiction and stuff. And he went to like over 10 rehabs and nothing was sticking. And he has a, you know, his moment of clarity finally came from watching his father cry and tell a story of like, at night, me and your mom are like stiff boards in bed waiting for that call that you have passed away. And the dad was crying, and Jason says, you know, listen, at that point, I didn't love myself enough, but I loved them. So at first I was doing it for them until I built up the tools to start loving myself. And that was that thing in that moment I understood with Robert Jr. of, he does love his mother. And is that enough? And I guess with Jason it was, but is that enough in most cases to get them on a path of being able to want it eventually for themselves?
Absolutely. And everyone has their rock bottom moment or moment of clarity, where those are AA terms. I am a member of Al-Anon, which is the side that friends and family of the addict. And I'm also an ACA, which is adult children of alcoholics and dysfunction. It's one of the best things I've ever done. I'm just going to throw out there, it's free, and you could get some of the best healing and support you've ever had in your life. So I just wanted to say that, because like,
could you imagine if you had to pay dues for that? Like, I have to pay my monthly dues for ACA. Like, thank God that is free, you know, because yeah, I mean that, and because we don't have a language in how to deal with these things that happen in life sometimes, because we don't know through generation what this does or how to deal with things. And you know, the older I get, the more I realize how hard life is and how impossible it seems sometimes. And this is just on a basic living day-to-day level, not when life presents you or you are an addict of some sort. It just makes things, I would imagine, just infinitely harder. So it's so refreshing to see this talked about, but also when you talk about these things on reality TV, you're then able to almost make an excuse for how crazy sometimes the other women act and how silly it can be if you have these really true life stories.
Yes. And to finish answering your question, I absolutely think it could be enough for someone that, because the journey of recovering on both sides is a journey of love, and to love yourself and to understand what real love is. Like, I learned a lot about what love is and how to really do relationships in Al-Anon. I went to Al-Anon just to be a good girlfriend. And like, I had all this codependent stuff going on. I'm like, yeah, babe, I'll do that. And, but I'm like, oh God, whatever. And then, but what made me stay in Al-Anon was like, this is like getting a master's degree in relationships. I'm like, oh, this is where I need to be. And ACA is like getting a PhD in relationships, because you really learn how to love yourself and then how to really love other people around you. And sometimes that's letting them be an addict. Sometimes that's letting them have a relapse and come back. And like in Al-Anon and ACA and all, or AA, all of it, it's like you love someone enough to and you give them the dignity to have their own experience instead of trying to control them, which is what you want to do when someone's like drinking their life away or they're on drugs. But you give them the dignity to have their own experience and you love them through that.
Yeah.
So you learn a lot about that as you recover.
Is there ever a risk, and this might sound silly, of being over therapized or whatever the word is? Like, man, we are only just talking, like when you're like, just, oh, I'm being codependent, this or that, or, like all of these kind of therapy terms that I think we are, thankfully giving more clarity to year after year. When I was growing up, I think, definitely wasn't where we are now in terms of respecting the mental health conversations that go on. But does it ever take away from the personal aspect, or is it always just a way better way of understanding the human condition?
I think it's important to understand the human condition. I am glad that there is language that everyone has access to because of social media and people sharing their experiences, especially with narcissism and addiction. I think people talk a lot about those topics. I just don't like when it's weaponized, or it's kind of like you still have to, you can't just go around calling people narcissists. If it's, I mean, I know when I see
Well,
that,
unless you have a podcast,
unless
Lauren,
you
and
have
then you totally, or if you're a member of Vanderpump Rules, you can call other people narcissists. That's the rules.
of course, those sound like very Lisa rule.
It's me, Lisa Barlow. Yeah. Well, what? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just so excited to talk to you. But like, what? Lisa Barlow. Now, here's a really interesting character as well, because she never admits if she's ever like. I mean, this is somebody that says she has full belief in herself. She's one of God's favorites. She will never admit she's wrong. And I'm like, well, how do you sum up somebody like Lisa? And like we just talked about narcissism, but would that fall into narcissistic behavior or traits? Like you said, we overuse that word potentially. But what do you see from Lisa Barlow?
Yeah, no, that definitely applies here. She's very narcissistically defended. Absolutely. Between never being able to apologize, never take accountability for anything. When you do say something, she does this thing where it's like she makes it a character defect. Like I just did a video on like narcissists, like it was a joke. You don't know. Okay, I'm sorry. You don't have a sense of humor. Or she said it in some episode. Oh, you guys don't understand how I speak. Okay, well, we're saying that the process is different, right? And so like, it's always a character defect of yours. It's not that she did anything wrong. And then like they have an addiction to drama. There's like a dopamine hit that when drama is created around them. And so like calling Heather when they were on that trip that Bronwyn put together. So Heather
Yeah.
wasn't invited to this trip. And so Lisa calls Heather, and then, Bronwyn is passing by and like sees that she's FaceTiming. It's like, what do you think that's going to do?
Of
And then
course.
Bronwyn, who I wanted to coach. I'm like, wow, I wish you were my client. Because I'm like, she keeps like, it's like Lisa knows exactly what button to push. And then Brown just keeps stepping into it. Even Todd was like, stop reacting. Like, do not,
Yes.
if you have a narcissist or a person in your life, I see this a lot with coworkers. So if you have a narcissistic coworker or toxic, whatever, and they're doing this, do not respond. I know it's tempting. When I work with my clients, I'm like, I know it's tempting, but you call me and you vent to me. Do not give them anything, because right now you are supply for them and they are loving it. They literally get a sense of relief and like joy when they trigger people and other people suffer, which is what Lisa kept doing at Bronwyn all season. It was terrible.
Well, so I mean, Lisa, this is what I always say is that what is the power of, she has this power where like Bronwyn, but not just Bronwyn, Angie K, like all of these people want Lisa's love. They want her attention. They want her to shine her light on them. And for me, like watching Bronwyn, this is a person on their first season of this show. It was so interesting to me because I thought Bronwyn was so powerful. Why give away your power to Lisa Barlow? Why, at this point, who cares if you're in her villa on the group trip? Who cares? You're doing great on your own. What is it? Is that I hate to keep saying narcissism,
No,
but is that a narcissism quality?
I think that yes, first of all, narcissists gain power and control over situations so they can manipulate people and they get people to do what they want or like be on their side. Lisa's obsessed with, like, you're not on my side, this whole thing. But in terms of the show, like as a overall, because I was thinking the same thing and I'm like, well, does she have the power to like kick people off the show? Because it kind of seems like that, because it's not like Bronwyn probably has the most money. I don't, I'm like, what is it? Is it a social thing? Or they could also be afraid, because narcissists do this a lot too with the smear campaigns. So Lisa definitely knows a lot of people in Salt Lake. It's kind of like
Bronwyn's jeweler even reached out to Lisa to give information. So I feel like it's just one of these personalities. Heather Gay gives up all of her power to Lisa Barlow as well. And I say this, Lauren, all the while still really enjoying watching Lisa Barlow. And what does that say about me? Like, what does that say about me that I'm like, yeah, but with her, I like it. I like watching her every week. I would be sad if she wasn't on. Like, what does that say about us? Because she's a very popular character on this show that we're all in that kind of same place that Heather and Bronwyn are. Like, we like Lisa.
I don't like Lisa. I'll say
there's one.
Yeah. And she just reminds me so much of like a very narcissistic family member I have that I just don't deal with anymore. And it's not that I wouldn't even give her the power. Like, I don't like her. I'm just kind of like, oh man, like if I want to deal with Lisa, I could literally just call so-and-so and, cause it's like the same bullshit. But, in terms of that, like narcissists are really good at making you feel like you have to prove themselves to that person all the time. There's just always like underlying.
There's always tests.
There's tests and like anxiety, and you can feel it. Like I can feel it when I meet, even in that first stage of meeting a narcissistic person when they're love bombing you and they're so charismatic and you think that they're great. I'm like, oof, it's there. I can feel it. I don't even know how to describe it. My nervous system can feel it in people. That's why when I was like a forensic profiler, it's really good for me easy for me, to just like figure out certain things. And that was one of them. But yeah. And so some people, and Heather has been very open about her journey of like, abandoning herself in relationship, like with her husband. She's like, I would do anything to just keep us together, and literally like abandoning who she was and not thinking about herself and putting up with stuff that she shouldn't have, for that relationship. And it does look like she's doing that with Lisa. And Lisa uses these intimidation tactics. Like she yells, she'll make your life hell if you disagree with her. It's very, very in line with what narcissists do. So it's like, I don't want to be on that side of that.
But do you notice though, if you say something nice about Lisa, she'll immediately get unangry, or like kind of her anger will subside really quickly, with Whitney of like, okay, I just want to make things good. Like, okay, let's make things good. All of these ladies can turn on a dime. Meredith Marks does this as well. Where she'll be extremely upset. And then 10 minutes later, everything's hunky-dory. Everything's great. And I'm like, the vacillating between extreme anger and then laughing at a situation. And I think that's what I guess makes them reality stars, because in our normal lives, that would floor me for a week. If I had like an outburst like that, I would feel it for the remainder of the week. And these people just like, hey, that's a Tuesday, and just keep going.
Yeah. And I think people that like drama, and what I mean by like it is like, it's a real addiction. We were just talking about drugs and alcohol, but some people, like, you get dopamine hits from that. You get an adrenaline rush, and some people really like it. So it's kind of like, and these women are on the show. Like, they know what they're doing. And so it's kind of like,
Lauren, what is the over under, or like the percentage you think of like they're giving into all of their bad traits because they know it makes good television? Or like, do you think these are already extreme traits that they've already had coming into the show? Or do you think they develop these traits through the show and then just fully lean in? Like, what is the over under on if that's possible or not? Or the show just amplifies how they've always been?
I think it's an amplifier, and it could be individual for each person. I think maybe some people might exaggerate or make up stories, but I think at the end of the day, it's an amplifier for what's going on. And so if you're doing that, and I do think that there's a lot of playing to the camera. Right. And I think
obviously
scripting. Yeah. So that's totally, and you're trying to get your airtime. And I feel like I saw that a lot with Brittany in the reunion. Like she was just, I don't know, like was just
Brittany Bateman. Yeah. So she was in the final part, you guys. And this is somebody that's very interesting as well. And I almost feel like she's not tethered to the earth. So I don't know if we'll ever get her true story because, obviously the story that we do know is that she was not talking to her daughters and she was potentially choosing men, and more specifically Jared Osmond, over her daughters. And, what is that? Like, what is that kind of behavior? Is there I mean, we're not diagnosing anybody, obviously, but is that, what kind of personality type is Brittany?
Well, in terms of, Heather was talking about it, that Mormon women are, raised to be like, you can't get into heaven without a husband. And there is this, there's a lot of rhetoric. And when I started my private practice, it was with Mormon women. It just happened to be that way because I specialized in compulsive behavior. When I started my private practice, it was compulsive behaviors. And because they can't drink, a lot of them, at least where I was living in Orange County, they overeat. And she's like, look, this is, and I was telling them like language around it, and they're like, oh, that's why we do that. Like they'll, and so, but they're like, the way that they behave with their husbands was out. I'm like, oh, what did he say? And I was just like, I wasn't used to, I'm like, well, what did you say back? And they're like, oh, well, and I had to learn about their religion and their culture. And it's like, we don't talk to our husbands that way. So there is some of that, and Brittany did educate the public or the show about it.
Yeah.
But so there is that. But Brittany, I mean, again, someone that completely abandons her life, that is very codependent to the point where like her children if you have adult children and they're not talking to you, it's for a reason. And she starts to talk about it a little bit, but at the very end, when they have, like her screening, when they're going to have her on, they're interviewing her, and she's like, "Oh yeah, my adult children don't talk to me. It's drama. Like that's not funny, Brittany."
Yes, exactly. It's not funny at all.
And then speaking of narcissistic abuse, I mean that is they could use that in like college or when they teach people. Or it was the exact cycle, when and then why did what's his name like invite Jared to the party? Justin? Wait,
Justin, Whitney Rose's husband.
Yes, Whitney's. Okay, so that's a whole other issue that I'll get to.
Well, also, I think that's another guy that's, Whitney's husband self-producing for the show. Like, hey, let's bring him here. It'll be a mess. And by the way, Lauren, this is where I, am probably a horrible person too, where I'm like, hell yeah, Justin, mess. We love to see it. Let's see how this goes.
That's what I was going to say. Well, okay, when we watch reality TV, we get all of the fun responses without like the cortisol hit,
and we don't have to take on the emotional burden after that 43 minutes.
Exactly. So that's what makes it fun for us. So you don't have to be a horrible person, just like on a biochemical level, that's what's happening. But
wait, Lauren, can narcissists get off on watching television in terms of like watching somebody else exhibit narcissistic behavior? Because we've had this conversation in the past too, because I'm like, does a narcissist recognize they're a narcissist? Like, do they have the language? Do they know, like, do they wake up one day and it's like the end of The Usual Suspects where you like put the mystery together and like, oh my God, I'm a narcissist this whole time. That's what I've been doing. Like because I find it hard to believe, like the gaslighting is another big term we always talk about. Do we know we're gaslighting somebody when we're gaslighting somebody, or is that just our behavior seeping out and now we have a label for it?
Okay, so narcissists, there's a spectrum, right? So some narcissists are like, for instance, the biggest hypocrites, and they like, I hate hypocrites, I hate people that gaslight, and they really do despise that behavior that they have. And by the way, narcissism is rooted in guilt and shame. So that's why they always
Which is also the Mormon religion, guilt and shame.
right. And that's why there was like, I don't do that. I'm talking about narcissists. I don't do that. You do that. You do that. And it's like this whole projection because they can't handle, like, the guilt and shame is right there. So yes, narcissists. And then some of them, I've had clients come to me and they're like, yeah, I exhibit those behaviors.
Yeah,
So
I remember you talking about a client from the past where they were aware of this.
yeah.
And I feel like that's got to be like kicking a drug as well. And, because it's probably worked for them so many times in their life,
Well,
or
and
they've
that's the other
gotten
thing.
things from that behavior that it's hard.
Yeah.
It's probably a very hard behavior to ever reshift your mind and how it looks at it.
Right. And what I did, I called it lazy because, and a lot of them, I really do know what they're doing. And a lot of them will be like, yeah, it sucks that people have all this awareness of what gaslighting is because it used to be easier for me to convince people that they were crazy. And they're like, yeah, that's how I roll. And that's how, and if I can't manipulate this person, I'll keep trying. And then when I can, I'll let it go. And then because you have like a ton of supply around you all the time. And that's why I refer to it as being very lazy sometimes. So instead of having the courage to, evolve or look at yourself or change a little bit, they're just like, nope, I'm not taking, I'll just find someone else. I mean, look at Lisa's husband, right? It's like Lisa can do no wrong. Like, there are people that
Yeah, what's going on there? And this is what I hate too, you guys, and I want to make sure you know that we're aware of this, is that we're going by this show. We don't get to live with them 24/7. We are
right.
going by these little scenes that we see built up over seasons. But even through that, the producers know that they are showing us a certain pattern with each character through the years.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with John Barlow? Because it seems like he will defend Lisa at a drop of a hat. He will he seems very soft spoken unless he has to step up for Lisa. Where does he fall?
I think, yeah, it's more of a codependent. If you're going to there's two types of people that can be with a narcissist. They're codependent, or they have a form. Okay, people don't understand this term a lot, but are they're psychopaths. A psychopath is not a sociopath. No, a psychopath
Wait,
is.
which is a better one to be, psychopath or sociopath?
I'm going to tell you, it's better to be a psychopath because psychopathology it's not what you think. It's you don't have the nerve, like you don't have empathy neural pathways. So actually, psychopaths are needed in society because they make the best surgeons, they make the best pilots, they make the best. Yeah, I got a surgery and I found one that was like, and then like his people that worked with him, they're like, oh, he doesn't have very good bedside manner. I'm like, no, that's a good surgeon, because he's not going to be affected by the fight he had with whomever, yes, last night or whatever. They don't care, but they're very good at what they do. Yes, you see in the movies like that, they could potentially kill someone, but they have a moral this.
Well, by the way,
they know that like that they will go to jail. So most of them don't do that. I'm telling you. So they have done studies where they show that people that are with, like, you see these couples and it's like that woman or that guy's so abusive and their counterpart is just so whatever, that they could like be a psycho. They just don't have those centers. They just don't care. But I do think that John, you hear a little bit about John's upbringing. He was adopted. Yeah. And then like the mother was like just a huge rejection.
Well, Lisa made him go like meet his birth mother, and he didn't want to. And this was actually like they talked about it on the show, but they also talked about it on the after show a little bit more. Yeah. And it just seemed like it was a big mess that kind of Lisa pushed, and she was like, "Oh well, sorry."
But it reinforced those, like, that abandonment. And like, that is the one thing that we don't want ever. Like, babies have that built into them. Oh. It is like on the most primitive level, we don't want to be abandoned because we won't survive, right? So as a baby, it's like, I won't. So when you have that happen to you, and then in adulthood, and then I think Lisa was trying to come from a good place with that. And then to get rejected again, that's a huge trauma. And so,
oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and so
he got rejected again in a sense, and yes. That was through Lisa, the other person that he needs her so much in his life,
But that's
and he just
why.
got rejected by his birth mother again, so he definitely needs Lisa.
Right. And that's like, to answer your question, it's like often people that have that type of trauma develop a codependency and they will attract narcissists. And it's like, there's always like, oh, I'm going to prove like I am the most loyal person and da da da. And like, Lisa seems to really, really love her husband and family. Like,
Yes.
but
Well, yeah, I think she does. By the way,
yeah,
that I do not question at all. I don't question that with most of these women, actually.
yeah,
Like, they all seem to so love their kids.
yes. And so like, but it does come from that. And so that's kind of, it's not, I don't think it's super healthy because it's like, I think you being in partnership should help you evolve. And sometimes that looking at parts of yourself that aren't great. And, you know, relationships, if you know who Esther Perel is, like she talks a lot about relationships, and it's like you have a relationship for you to grow. Like, I mean, it's one of the things that it directly affects the quality of your life, the relationships that you have. So, I mean, if you're just going to have, you know, keep placating to your wife's bullshit and not ever be like, you know what, maybe you shouldn't have said that, maybe that hurt my feelings, or, you know, so there's none of that. So it's just kind of this, I just feel like part of it's kind of like, okay, you're chasing the mom you never had, kind of. That's what it feels like to me. You know, it's like I want my mom's approval.
If we got all of these people into your program or intensive therapy, would we just ruin the show completely? Would we just
No,
like
because
completely
Lisa
ruin
wouldn't
the
show
show?
up. Narcissists don't go to therapy. So Lisa would be like, you know what? You need therapy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, also, I was just thinking about, you were talking about the surgeons and being psychopaths. Any people out there listening or watching this right now, if you're about to go under a surgery, right before you go under, say, hey, I hope you're a psychopath, and then have them knock you out. I think that's a good. Wait, what's a sociopath? So what's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath?
Okay, they're completely different. That's where when people start using words like that they don't know about, and like there's actually this guy that he's really popular on YouTube, and he mixes up the terms all the time. It drives me crazy. Okay, a psychopath is like you're born that way. Any other personality disorder, you're not born that way. It's a defense mechanism that you learn early in life.
Yeah.
But a psychopath, you just literally, it's kind of like being autistic in a way. In fact, often they present very similar to me, depending on what type of autism it is. But it's kind of like but the things with psychopaths is it's like they know, okay, humans like this. To be charismatic, I do this. In order to, you know, and they're often very smart, and that's why they make really good pilots, things that are very technical and that you have to get your emotions out of. So that's why I'm saying, if you're in a situation where, you know, or like maybe like a firefighter or something, that too, it's like when you just need, like when someone's life is in your hands, you probably want someone like that, right? Because they don't have that center, they don't have empathy centers. Those neural pathways aren't connected, but they make up for it in other ways. But they're often people that are very kind and, you know, demure. And you would never, they're not angry, like serial killer type at all. But
Was that a sociopath then?
No, sociopaths are the opposite. They get pleasure out of people's pain. So, and they are often described as like they don't have empathy, but they do. They understand emotions, and they like human suffering. And so there's a lot of overlap between narcissism and being a psychopath because of that. Because a lot of being a psychopath is like narcissism on steroids. Think of it like that, because it's just extra. Like they have the capacity to kill, and then they have the capacity.
Psychopath, not sociopath.
Psychopath.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Sociopath.
Yeah, that's what I was like, wait, I'm confused. So sociopath.
Sociopath. Like, for instance, I really think that Diddy is a sociopath. He's killed people.
I agree.
Like, you know what I mean? And so he has all the narcissistic traits, but you can kill someone and justify your behavior. You killed your ex-wife. You killed all these other people.
I want to throw in allegedly, you guys. We're going to throw in allegedly. And I've done full episodes on Diddy and the docuseries and things like that, which I highly recommend. But, you know, there obviously is a lot of rumors and potential evidence that, you know, he was involved in the murder of his wife.
Right. And so like they have all the narcissistic defense mechanisms, plus this ability to just be really dark and sinister. And, they're not people that belong in society. Whereas, then that's sociopath. And whereas a psychopath, you know, they have a function in society.
Okay, we'll keep you psychopaths out there. We're able to use you guys. The sociopaths we do not want. But Diddy it's very interesting because I watched this 4-part Discovery docuseries on him, and it was just example after example, and it was always the same pattern. It was always the same thing, and like he was also able to exhibit or show extreme joy. Like he'd get really hopped up on something, but then I think that's where like the freak off parties happened, because then he was like chasing bigger and bigger highs, and they became like 3-day sexcapades, which was just wild. And you had the money and the resources to make those things happen. And I don't even know how you begin to treat somebody like Diddy that will never admit that he's at fault for anything.
You can't treat anyone that doesn't have a willingness to change. And that's what's scary about sociopaths. And I do not think that they belong in society. I don't think anyone that's doing the things that he's done belongs in society.
Yeah, I don't know. I love that we went from Lisa Barlow to Diddy, but let's go back to really quickly is back to Heather Gay really quick. I notice sometimes I see some of myself in Heather that I feel, and I don't know if I'm reading this incorrectly, is that she sometimes really loves herself and feels herself. And at other times, I feel like she completely hates herself. And I think sometimes I see this, she just kind of goes between these two things, and she became like a breakout character on this show. And I think she never was used to being the popular one. So I think it's very uncomfortable for her. So when she tries to lean into it, it rings very false, because I'm like, this isn't you. Like, you're trying to be a badass. Like, you're a badass just when you admit that I don't know. Like, what is that when I will love myself one day and hate myself the next? Is that, you're like, that's a sociopath.
No. I just, and okay, that's what I love about Heather though. Like she just, you see her insecurities sometimes, and we learn from other people like on the show that she's always wanted to be one of the cool girls and wasn't. Yeah. And she does come off like that. I don't know. I appreciate seeing both of those sides, because I think, like you just said, like a lot of people see themselves in that. And I do think that she's healing. I just so much see like her inner child being healed, like this little, like her inner, I do the inner child work sometimes with people. And so you could really see like the like inner, like 8-year-old or 10, like awkward 10-year-old that just wants to, and it's still like that part of her is still wounded. I feel like when I see it. And so it's kind of like, we have these parts of ourselves that are still wounded, and they will show up in relationships hardcore. And so I do think that that wounded part of her is just front and center a lot of the times. And I do think that she's healing and getting better with it, but it is there sometimes. And Lisa knows how to use that.
Oh yeah. I mean, but also Heather makes it super easy for Lisa, because Heather is up Lisa Barlow's ass from season 1. Yeah, well, but then and just needs that approval from Lisa Barlow. And here's another person. You're a breakout character. You've written 2 books. You're writing your 3rd. Like, you're good, man. You do not need this. And it was almost a gift that Jen Shaw was like put into prison, because that was another person where Heather gave up all of her power, lied for Jen Shaw, suggested lies. Like, hey, this is what I can do for you, Jen. I'll lie in this way for you. I'll take cover for the black eye or whatever. Can we ever heal our inner child, though, through reality television and becoming famous? Is that really healing in any way?
You heal through relationships, and literally when I was talking about neuroplasticity, it's really, you really rewire your brain to respond to people differently, to respond to yourself differently. It does start with loving yourself a lot more. And she is, I feel like she's on that journey though. She's really because people that really love themselves, they don't do that. They don't like compromise themselves in those ways for Lisa or Jen. Like, they don't do that. So, and she is very aware that she did that in her last marriage. So I do think that she's working on it. And I hope that she, develops a more sense of like personal sovereignty as time goes by.
Well, I feel like with any of these women or any reality star in general, if they refuse to come back for another season, I'll be like, oh my God, you're healed. You've done the work. You don't need reality television. But to go back really quickly, we were speaking about the Mormon religion, and all religions have this kind of structure to it where you are giving yourself to a higher power, and there are rules that go along with this. And the Mormon religion really fascinates me. I grew up with a lot of Mormons. And even just the system of heaven. They have 3 levels of heaven in the Mormon religion. religion, which I think is just great. Like even in heaven, there is a class system, you know, like you're like, oh, I got to get bottle service so I can get the best table in heaven. And I always found that really interesting about the Mormon religion. And the other thing you see with, you know, they have the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives on Hulu now. They have Salt Lake City. Mormons are making a big push into reality television, because I think there's also, we see this fight against, like there's this rule of not drinking and no caffeine, and you see him then like sneak it. Like I remember Heather Gay's book talking about her going out and drinking with the girls when she was Mormon, and like it's really fun and all that, but then there, you know, you're also internalizing this guilt for so long, but you know, like, so you're always guilty about something because you want to have a glass of wine.
Right. Or something. It's always something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard everything. And if it's like they don't drink, or it's like, okay, well, we only have sex in this way, or like for these reasons. And I mean, it goes, and I'm just talking about all religions now. Like, we've just heard everything. And so at some point, you know, and religion is so personal. So, but it is something to think about. And, you know, I've worked with people that got out of the Mormon religion and are fucking angry, and they're at that stage of healing, which, you know, that's a real stage of healing, is anger. We also see that with Taylor in Southern Charm, but that's a different subject. But anyway, like, you know, that anger like really needs to be flushed out and worked through, and they have it for different reasons. And I don't want to, like, you know, bag on anyone's religion, but for them, it was just like, that was very oppressive. It was abusive. And so it's like, everyone gets to decide, like, I feel like whatever your personal relationship is with God, source, or higher power, it should be yours. And if you want to do that with Mormonism or through Mormonism or Christianity, whatever, then do that. And I think that's one thing. But then, you know, feeling like you're under some other organization's control is another thing.
Yeah. And a lot of, I mean, obviously, a majority of the religions have a certain type of structure that you can kind of fall into, that we see people come out of. And like you said, that anger is always there. And I really find, you know, it's like, I mean, I just find it interesting that, you know, a higher power or God or whatever you call him or her up there. I just love that one of the beliefs is right, and then everybody else is like, oh, I got it wrong. Oh, like, you know, it turns out like Mormon was the only one and true religion. Like, oh, the rest of everybody with all your other religions, you got it completely wrong. You got egg on your face. Like, God has to understand. Like, oh, but I get that that's how you were raised. Like, I don't know. Sometimes that'll blow my mind when I think about, but that's off topic. Sorry. Yeah. Anyways, to move to Salt Lake City, you said Taylor, and you're talking about Taylor and Green, Shep's ex from Southern Charm, who is still on the show, and you kind of nailed it, where you can sense that she's angry now in regards to Shep and that relationship that she's now with Gaston, or however you say it. She's with a new boyfriend. She says she's happy with, but man, you can feel that energy coming off the screen anytime she is talking about Shep or around Shep. So you think that's just realization?
Oh yeah. It's the stage of, you know, and Taylor, you know, did everything. I think she did a lot of things wrong in her relationship. She was mothering Shep, you know, she was giving like Shep anything, like, you know, acting like his wife when, you know, they were dating. I mean, she was basically always trying to like prove her. She did some reality testing. Oh, it's called reality testing. It's a psychology term. She was like, well, what if I accidentally got pregnant? There was some like pregnant, I think it was in season 8. I can't remember. And so she was always trying to like get him to commit in these ways that he was never going to do. And then, so you know, and I think that she really allowed herself to be used by him, and not treated well either. You know, when he yelled at her about like dropping the egg and that the game,
you idiot.
And just so disrespectful. And so when you finally come out of that, and then still sleeping with him and still really trying to get all of these things where she's just really, in my opinion, disrespecting herself, but like allowing herself to be disrespected, and other people commented on it too. So they break up, and it's like, really you're angry at yourself. It's being displayed like she's angry at Shep, but when, you know, and I've been there, most of us have been there, what you're really angry at is yourself. And then, you know, the guilt and shame that comes with like, oh, why did I tolerate that behavior? And that just needs to be processed because you don't
See,
want to
Lauren,
bring
I wish for Taylor's sake this conversation would be had on the show with her and one of her good friends, because this would make you not necessarily root for Taylor, but you would understand. Like, I mean, we have this kind of general understanding when we watch Taylor, but I think she's not as, and I think the women, especially on Southern Charm, not Miss Patricia or Madison, sometimes the men just stomp them with dynamic, like in terms of they are big, overwhelming forces, you know, and they've been on the show for so long that the women's stories on Southern Charm always take a backseat. And, you know, Madison, obviously a bigger character, and Miss Patricia, the, you know, matriarch of the show. But all of these men have such big personalities that it is their way or the highway. And so sometimes these other conversations are not happening with women like Taylor.
Well, there's two things there. Taylor, I don't think is available to have conversations like this. She's just so in survival mode and so angry. And then hooking up the one good friend, the one support system that she has, she goes and hooks up with his ex. Like she hooked up with Olivia's, what's his name?
Gaston?
No.
Oh, Whitney? Or what do you?
No, Taylor hooked up with.
Austin. Sorry, Austin.
Yeah. And so now you don't even have that support system. And then you do it at the worst time for Olivia, like in her life when her brother passed. It was just like all terrible.
No, that was last season. Yeah.
Taylor like dug her own grave in that way. She is like so angry. She's just blinded by all of these emotions, and she won't take the time to be like, you know what? I need to heal right now. No, I'm just going to go fuck my best friend's ex-boyfriend. That'll solve everything. No.
But in the moment, you are getting those like oxytocin things of like feeling protected and safe, and like Austin's showing you interest, like showing interest in you. So it is something that I'm sure provides like a raincoat.
You have to know better. I always say this, like with women, like sex affects men and women differently. So when a woman has sex, yes, oxytocin is released, but it does give you the feel. It's like, this is just like biology, like your biology, the part of your limbic system, part of your brain doesn't understand what situationship is at all. Like it just understands like, okay, I had sex with this person. I could possibly be pregnant. So this is all like unconsciously, like in the nervous system. I might be pregnant. So I'm going to stay with this guy who's going to protect me through this pregnancy, which is why women literally, when they have sex and bond with a guy, whether he cares or not, like they ignore red flags. And I have to tell women, I'm like, your brain is literally on drugs. You need to detox. So you can see that, because like you have these oxytocin highs, and then when a cortisol hit comes in, where like the meaning the red flag, it's like, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to ignore that, because you have this like biochemical addiction, for lack of going on. And that really happens when you're in narcissistic abuse. It's like there's a biochemical addiction going on. But it does even happen when you especially when you have a bad breakup, you just want that oxytocin and you want that serotonin again. And instead of processing it in a healthy way, which she did have a choice. It's not like anyone was like, holding a gun to her head and be like, go.
Yeah, but processing it is not the fun choice. We go towards like what is like fun in the moment.
She's just so angry. It wasn't. So I mean, there could have been a secondary motive of like, oh, I want to feel safe, and if she wanted like safe masculine energy, she could have been with not that JD's safe masculine energy, but he was like willing to actually like date her and like treat her respectfully, maybe. But, she did that because she was so angry at Shep, and she still might be to this day,
Well, yeah. And, we carry these scars around with us for a long, long time. Now, Shep, though, we see a storyline with him this season where he has met like an early 20s girl in the Bahamas. And all of a sudden we're seeing a different Shep that is like, he's literally needing her attention, like FaceTiming her. Where is she? Oh, you're the busiest little girl there ever was. And now we see that they take a cast trip, and this girl, like, man, we all can see it. Even the producers can see it because they're setting up the storyline. Craig cracked me up and says, listen, this girl's energy, I can read auras, and this is like crazy. Like, she does not seem like she's into Shep at all. How can Shep, who has, I don't want to say ever targeted people, but he understands that he might have broken a lot of hearts out there. How did he get taken in by something that is so obvious to all of us watching this show that she is not into him?
Well, the thing is, okay, first of all, and this actually goes to the second point about like the characters, the male characters in the show being big and taking up all this space. But I also think that that's like a cultural thing in Charleston. It seems like
Yeah.
these guys with the, so
Yeah.
the show is just mirroring back like the culture that's going on. And so like with, Shep is just like, oh, I get my way. And like, I do think that Shep uses women. Like he used Taylor and didn't like, but she allowed herself to be used. I want to make that clear. But like, any man.
But is he cognizant? Is he cognizant that I am using
I
Taylor?
think he is. I think he is and doesn't care. I mean, his friends were very straightforward with him. Like, why you're just gonna let her quit her job? Like, and then not like, I mean, if a man is like telling you to quit your job, like, are you married to him? Is he helping you? And no, just quit your job and travel with me because that would be fun for me and blah, blah, blah. But even with this new girl that lives in the Bahamas, it's still all about him. It's like, oh yeah, I just want to get married to her. And it's good for his ego that she was Miss Bahamas or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to be married to Miss Bahamas and live in the Bahamas. And so I could keep my Peter Pan syndrome going and And like, he's just like, and she's like not going for it. And I think it's good for him to have that experience of, her not caring, and then she might be using him because apparently like she's a big Southern Charm fan. So it's kind of like, yeah, Chef, this is what it's like when you get used, when you use people.
Which I think is going to be in this week or next week's episode, is the realization that she is potentially using him, and he's going to have this moment on the beach, I think, where he's like, I can't believe this. And everybody has tried to warn him on this show, so it'll be really interesting to see a wounded Shep or a Shep that is, because at the beginning of the season, this was always, I should have talked to you then as well, is that, do you recommend for any of your patients, instead of hardcore therapy, just to do ayahuasca? Like, should I just go do ayahuasca? Because he says it's like 3 years of therapy in like a day or something, and which sounds pretty good. Do you recommend ayahuasca for all of us?
First of all, I've done ayahuasca and I have worked with people. You don't do ayahuasca and then you get some realizations, so you could bring things. It's like doing a lot of shadow work. So you could notice aspects of yourself that maybe were unconscious or that you're very uncomfortable with. Shadow work is about like looking at parts of yourself that you really don't like, but integrating them and like releasing them so your relationship patterns are better and like your life is better. But if you do ayahuasca, or there's certain shrooms that do the same thing, you still need to integrate the work. Like you still have to talk to someone and do a lot of integration. Yeah. So you don't it's not like when I did ayahuasca, they're like, oh, I'm healed. And I'm like, wait, get my number. You're not. Like, I promise you. Yeah. Like, I just couldn't believe and it is a really good feeling to have all these realizations. But I really don't like these people that are stuck at these levels of consciousness that are just like, that do ayahuasca all the time. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so woke and I blah, blah, blah. Like, you're down here because I have this. Realizing things is the beginning of it. That has nothing to do with healing. That's what
Kylie Jenner always said, that realizing things is a very powerful thing. But there's work to be done, obviously in addition to this. So that's why it was so funny for me, because you see all of these men on Bravo, whether it be Scream Therapy with Tom Sandoval or Reiki with Jax Taylor or ayahuasca with Shep, like all of these men, it's almost like the easy way out or the thing that's in vogue. Like, I can't really talk about my actual feelings because that's scary, but what I can do is introduce my body to a very intense psychotropic drug.
Yeah. And then, by the way, it almost becomes a form of gaslighting. Like, you know what? I did ayahuasca. Okay. So maybe
yes.
I'm the healed one. Like, and that's like, spiritual narcissists do this all. Whether like you see it out a lot here, and like when I lived in Santa Monica, I would see it in Venice all the time. It's like, you know what? I just feel like, I can't provide you with what you need. Bitch, respect. Yes. Yeah. You get to like do, like, you can't just use all these spiritual words all the time to not, take responsibility for your behavior. So I just, so anyway, that was a little off track, but like, I do think that it is used as a way to cop out sometimes. It is just the beginning. Ayahuasca at its best is an awareness tool. It is not healing anything. Shrooms, again, great awareness tool, but you have to integrate, you have to do the work from there.
And at its worst, you shit yourself.
Yes, or throw up.
Yeah, or throw up multiple times. Yes. I'm very excited to try it one day, but that time has not come yet. I was talking to my therapist this week, and was talking to the audience about this because, like we're having a conversation right now and I'm super excited and I'm loving it and I want it to keep going. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Actual therapy itself is not nearly as exciting as podcasting. Like, it really can be incredibly awkward.
I love
You
it.
feel, no, but like for the, so I was just saying like, oh man, it is so much more fun to do the like podcasting, but sometimes with therapy, it's not ayahuasca. It's not a mushroom trip. It is looking at behavior and maybe admitting some things about yourself that are really hard to admit, that make you really uncomfortable and that can leave you feeling really like unsettled and unmoored. And I think that's important to point out as well, is that this, nothing in your life is going to get solved in one session or 1 week.
No, but it is okay if you feel dysregulated for a little bit, because you're developing new neural pathways. So that one, like if you have a realization in therapy and you feel a little dysregulated or you're crying or something out of the normal, I know it's uncomfortable. I always say this. I'm like, I know it's uncomfortable, but I'm here with you. I'm holding space for you and it will pass. Emotions are energy in motion, but you have to like release old ones. But that just means like new neural pathways are being formed. Like a lot of people are tired after a really intense therapy session. I'm like, go sleep, go let your nervous system re-regulate, and you're building new neural pathways. This is awesome. This is a great thing. And it feels not great for maybe, I would say, an hour to a week, depending on who you are. And then you're at this new level of consciousness. You're at this new level of freedom that was so worth the work, right? Instead of repeating old patterns that are making you suffer. So yes, it does take some courage though. But
are you on a hard out right now, or can you keep going?
I can keep going.
Okay, let's, because I'm sorry, we've really kind of there's a couple other things I wanted to talk about, and I'm obviously enjoying this, but creating these neural pathways and trying to change behavior can be so difficult because we are so into, like, sometimes I realize that I like to find negative things out about myself that I dislike. Like I like to dislike myself. Like it's almost like I'm really good at it at this point. Like I've learned all of these ins and outs and like, oh man, I can always believe the worst of myself. And that's like, I'm really comfortable in that, because believing the best in yourself, that's a really hard position that would make me really uncomfortable. And I find that interesting to speak about or to even notice. You're like, oh, that's me, Billy Joel, playing the piano man. Like my greatest hit is like bagging on myself. And everybody has something, not that specifically, but everybody has something that life has built up in them. And I find it interesting of this journey to potentially try to change and eventually be happier, even though when I start trying to reframe things or look at the bright side of things, it is so uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Oh my God, Ryan, do you and I have the same addiction to guilt and shame? Because
I love guilt. I can play guilt and shame for like 3. I'm so good at it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I've done a lot of healing around it. And I used to attract a lot of narcissistic type of relationships, whether they're romantic or friendships, because it's like, oh, that got reinforced my guilt. I was like feeling like such a victim and I really wanted to get out of that. And I'm like, oh, I'm feeding my guilt and shame addiction. Like my guilt and shame addiction needs to stay alive. So of course I'm going to have these people. And then after you get all the people out, guess who you still do it to yourself.
Yes.
And so then you have to work with your inner critic and be like, bitch, I'm in charge and I don't want to do that anymore. Unless but sometimes the inner critic, it's like, oh, okay, you're right. Let me get out the ice cream and I'm just whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a real thing. And it's a real addiction. In case, you are going through the same thing and you're listening to this, be gentle with yourself. It is a real addiction that, your nervous system is responding to, but you can change it if you want to.
Yeah, I definitely believe that as well. So back to Southern Charm really quick. I wanted to talk about Craig. He's obviously in a journey where he thinks his journey is, I'm becoming this better man. I'm a gardener now. I've got a home that I do not want to leave. I don't want to go out and party on King Street with Austin and Shep anymore, which I kind of like, hell yeah, that's a great realization. But also this thing that we've seen over the last couple of seasons with Paige DeSorbo from Summer House of wanting to settle down, and Paige is the one. And I was truly kind of, I mean, I was truly shocked that they split up because I thought, oh no, I thought even the storylines about them moving, I thought kind of rang false, that I was like, oh, they're going to be fine. This is all just for cameras. And then it turned out it wasn't. And I just watched Craig today. He was on the Tamron Hall show. He went on there, this talk show, on Summer House the other night. It came out on a scene that we're going to see at the end of the Summer House's season, that Paige says that Craig was texting, her words, two bitches through the course of our relationship. So he went on Tamron Hall and said, no, that is not actually correct. I think once tempers, kind of simmer down, she will rethink what she said. But I mean, just your take on Craig and where he's at and this breakup, where do you think he is?
Okay, so just to comment on everything that you said, yeah, I do like Craig's evolution. I mean, and then compared to, because Craig is younger than Shep and Austin, who are, I mean, still acting like children, like, let's get drunk. And he's like,
Craig's younger than Austin? I thought Austin was the youngest. Is he?
Oh, is Craig? No, isn't Austin in his 40s?
I thought, I mean, I really don't know. I always thought Austin was like the baby of the group.
They're all kind of around the same age, but like Craig is growing up is the point. And they're not, and it's creating some tension. And so, I mean, I like seeing that. And I think that that's great for Craig. But the thing like with us, with Craig and Paige. I thought they were like, from the beginning, I thought they were going to break up. I didn't see it. Yeah. Just because of like, I was watching it on the Summer House side of things, and she's just like, oh, I love my Italian man model. And then I have the Southern, I just think that she, even though she's 32, she's just still wants to be like living in New York and being single. And like, she just
which by the way, she has every right to do that. Like, which is totally, that's why it's good that she broke up with him.
I don't think their values and what they wanted out of a relationship were ever aligned. And like, you see it when they, I forget where they are, but Paige was like yelling at her, like it just triggered.
Oh, the bee farm.
The bee farm, yes, thank you. And then she's just like, I'm only 31. Like, what else? Like, and it's just like, whoa, this guy. And then it's such an oxymoron, because then we see Austin and Shep who have like all these like Peter Pan commitment issues, and then Craig is over here like, okay, I want to
settle down. I want a family.
And so, but I just don't think. There's a lot of people that that you're compatible with, maybe like to have fun with or sexually or all this stuff. And then I think that they had that, but I don't think that they're compatible and like, let's build a life like that. That's who you marry, who you can build a life with. And then where your values are aligned. And they just never had that to me. So I saw the breakup coming.
What I will say that is very interesting, and this is where us, the audience, the parasocial relationship comes in, because I think, obviously we're still hyped up from Scandival and stuff, is that we want to make this bigger than it is, when what I keep saying and what you kind of just said is listen, breakups are sad. It sucks, one person usually doesn't want the breakup to happen. One person does, but is afraid, obviously doesn't want to hurt the other person. And I think, we're now kind of like keeping this alive, and we're almost getting Paige more upset and Craig more upset, when in reality, this is just, like you said, two people with different values. And Craig, listening to him on the Tamron Hall show, I think he just said, like, he goes, even when now I think about it after I processed it a little bit, she doesn't want that for herself, and she doesn't want that for me. She doesn't want me to be with the wrong person, which is her. And I thought, that seems to be some sort of realization. But in the back of my head, the only thing I worry about with Craig, and it's so funny how we worry about men more than women, instead of like, I don't know, but I'm like, oh, is it going to be the Paige syndrome, where that's the one that always got away? He'll compare everybody to Paige. That's the Moby Dick.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not Craig, but I just kind of don't think so. I mean, I know how men look at women, like the one that got away, and then why, and then usually the one that got away type of thing, it's because like, oh, fuck, I was acting like a dick. I shouldn't have done that. I should have been more mature. Like, even Paige, she said publicly, like, Craig's the best boyfriend I ever had. Yeah. Like, he did everything right. So when you don't have any like regrets, like, oh, I should have done things differently, I don't think that's the one that got away. So, but I think that Craig is just ready for the next phase of his life in terms of like commitment and relationships.
Will
And
he rush that because he does have goals now?
I think, no, every relationship should help you learn more about yourself. So I just think that for Craig, and he's still like, they just broke up, right? Hopefully he's still reflecting on all this. I mean, you can see that he's thinking about it a lot, like as they're starting to beat the dead horse of the relationship, like it's starting to, towards the end, or at least that's what I perceived it as. You can tell like the wheels are turning. And so, I feel like Craig should just be taking, like, anytime someone breaks up with someone, it's kind of like, okay, what did I learn about myself in that relationship? What did I learn about relationships in general? What do I want, need, and deserve in a relationship? What are my standards? Let me write them down. I make my clients I invite them to do this when they about relationships. I invite them to, because it really is clarifying, and it's really grounding, because breaking up can be so dysregulating, and like, you feel kind of unearthed. So like, you're really setting down and like getting clear on what you want and your standards and how you want things to look. And I'm talking about like, how do you guys vacation? Do you guys want kids? Like, all these things are things to think about. Like, how does day-to-day stuff look? Like, people don't.
Well,
So I mean,
there's a show on Hulu right now called Muslim Matchmaker, which deals with dating in the Muslim faith. And I interviewed the two matchmakers last week, and I always love learning about new things and new cultures and religion and things like that. But one of their parts of their program is that they'll say, you have to ask like 300 questions, and we're talking everything from childhood to finance to like really being intentional and on that same page. And I find that, would you agree that maybe the majority of people don't ever write down what they're looking for, don't ever write down their wants and their needs?
I think, I think a lot of people don't do it, but I think for different reasons. Like Shep and Austin, I just think that they're
lazy.
that they just want to have fun, and then that girls like, and they're acting like they're so different now, like, oh yeah, I'm taking this one seriously. But so there's those types, and then I think there's the types like Brittany from Salt Lake, who's just like, I'm just so desperate, and has all this like codependent survival type of energy going on. Like, I just need to be with a man, so I'm not gonna, whatever you want, I'll do whatever you want type of thing, and I'll take you back.
You can have every piece of me. Yeah.
Right. So I think that people do it for different reasons. And so sometimes it's deciding to be unconscious, and sometimes it's like, well, I don't really care about anyone but me, so whatever, But you will have a more fulfilling relationship if you know what you want, your standards and boundaries.
And you can only find that, I think, with time as well. But the last thing about Paige and Craig I wanted to ask you, and maybe, answer this from your profession, and then answer this as just as a girl, like just as a girl that doesn't do what you do. So Paige said, was upset at Craig because Craig didn't, after they broke up, defend her from cheating rumors, that she allegedly cheated during the relationship, which he says she did not. He knows I didn't. And she and the Summer House cast feel like Craig should have made like a special post or, kind of protected her from online abuse. And my opinion, just my gut reaction was, well, wait, he got broken up with. Why does he have to be her spokesperson when Paige can, like, she has no problem speaking for herself? If he's dealing with this heartache, why does he have to then like put that on pause and go, hey, I'm the guy she broke up with. Anyway, just wanted to remind people, she did not cheat at all. She's great. Okay. Tell me from a personal standpoint and a professional standpoint, how that situation should have gone.
I mean, both. That was like such a funny way that you worded that. Like, just talk like a girl.
Well, no, because sometimes, like, I mean, just like you have a gut reaction to something, and then you're like, oh, I'm thinking about it, and it's different.
No. And no, I think it's a great question. And to me, they're the same. I don't think that. I actually think that that's really rude and unreasonable, because, you can stick up for yourself, you can talk for yourself. And I don't think at this point Craig owes her anything, especially like a public statement like that.
But so many people think he should have done that. So I'm trying to I'm almost going like, okay, there's a possibility that I'm completely wrong on this. What am I not seeing? What am I not seeing?
No, I completely agree with you. I don't think there's any reason that he needs to do that. And like, whatever he might, in a few weeks or whatever when like the dust settles for him, and that's his choice. But I don't think that's not something that is like customary to do it during a breakup. I don't think that that needs to
Yeah.
be and
Um,
maybe Paige is just like getting people behind her type of thing, but
Well,
like
and and I think that was the only kind of like sticking point she seemed to have because other than that, I feel like she's kind of handled this the right way. And it'll
Mhm.
be interesting to see if the audience, the parasocial relationship, is able to continually make her mad, where she keeps like, Craig as well keeps dragging this out because the show keeps dragging it out because they're gonna have to relive this through the lens of a camera that they've already filmed, and we're not gonna see it for another 3 months.
Yes. And like I do think Paige is like big, and I'm not hating on this. I just think it's the truth that she is enjoying like being the star of like Summer House or one of the stars of Summer House. And so it's like,
And she's got a
oh,
huge podcast. She is a star. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think that she's enjoying that. And it's like, I don't need this like affecting my brand. And so I think that that's her like concern right now. And the breakup is like, okay, whatever, we broke up. So that's where she is. And those are her priorities right now. And so, yeah.
Well, it's interesting when, couples start to think of themselves as brands, or one person in the couple does, because Craig obviously has a brand that he talks about as well. And this is kind of the Sandoval thing of it as well, where he's like, oh, dude, me and Ariana are kind of like a brand, dude. When you start thinking about your relationship as a brand, I feel like that's, I don't know a lot, but I feel like that's a red flag potentially, because it shouldn't be around brand. It should be around the person and the feelings and what you build together. And I guess that is you build a brand, but don't call it a brand, for the love of God.
No, but again, that's highly narcissistic. It's like, I'm using you, like, because narcissists use people to get what they want. And so that's what he was doing in that. And that's what they do. So I don't think, and, this has been proven time and time again. There's a ton of books about it, like on relationships. It's like working with your partner, with your husband, with your boyfriend. It's often not a good idea. It often just affects the relationship in a negative way. Now, there are tons of couples that work together and have businesses together, and they could figure out the yin yang, or one is more dominant in the business. But to have like two business partners, it can be not great for a romantic relationship at times, because there's
Yeah.
struggles and things like that. It's not recommended a lot of the times. It's also
Because you don't want to tell your kids, if you have kids, like love is a very special thing where one brand meets another
yeah.
brand, and then they have a third brand together that they create. Listen, we've already gone so long, and I hesitate to even bring up Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds and Justin Baldoni. But I mean, listen, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the case at all, and there's no. I mean, what are your thoughts? Because I've read now Blake Lively's complaint. I've read the New York Times article. I've also read Justin Baldoni's complaint, his website, and I'm waiting for Blake Lively's amended complaint to drop to do another episode on that. And I don't like making it my show every day, so I kind of put them in these big episodes. But while I have you here, is there anything that you have read, or have you read both sides, or do you have a feeling on this?
Oh yeah, I've done a lot of research. I think it's super interesting. I personally think that this started from Ryan Reynolds, and a lot of people have already come out saying this, that he's very insecure, but also controlling. And that's why Scarlett Johansson, for instance, broke up with him. And, 'cause she wasn't putting up with that stuff. But and then he is very jealous. And then he does have a history of falling in love with his co-stars. And so I guess Blake Lively did too. And, that is how they met. And so he was kind of getting unhinged, wanting to see the dailies and like all these like very controlling things. Like he was coming on set and doing these things, and they had a fight, and like there's obviously like chemistry. And I just think that Ryan became really unhinged. And I don't think that, I mean, obviously he wasn't thinking that they'd be exposed in this way, but and I think it's all kind of getting in their like going back on them, like not how they expected. But and then I also think that when someone's really controlling, because I have heard this, and I do think it's true that, Blake Lively, she's more like willing to submit to the control. She's not maybe as intelligent as Scarlett Johansson was, who was just like, no, I'm not doing this. I want to be an equal part, and so I think Blake Lively got manipulated, because.
Well, but then do you think then she wanted to assert dominance over Justin Baldoni because she wasn't able to assert dominance in her relationship with Ryan? Or do you think that is a non-issue?
No, I kind of think that she developed some feelings for Justin, and I think Ryan was sensing that. And then I think that they were like fighting about it. And then, couples do this that don't have like a secure attachment. It's like kind of like, okay, especially if one actually cheated, it's kind of like, okay, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. And actually they're the bad guy. We're going to villainize him instead of being like, hey, you know what? I did develop feelings for this because I'm missing this part of our relationship and I was projecting it onto Justin. So no, I think that she might have had some chemistry with Justin. Ryan lost his mind over it. They were fighting like crazy about it. And so it's like, it turned into this thing where it's like, I'm going to villainize Justin to protect my relationship and so I could stop fighting with my husband. And then it snowballed into this whole like, oh, well, we're going to sue him, like, because, Ryan's ego.
Yeah, I just feel like the loss, this is where I get hung up every time, is that even if what you say is true, which unfortunately, if we're going by what you potentially think is true, we're never going to find out the honest truth about that.
Yeah.
Blake's not going to get on the stand and go, okay, you got it. I loved him. I loved Justin. And, it made right. We're never going to find out that aspect of it. So what I keep going back to, if Ryan is a brand, right, and he's very, controlling or domineering, and he's built this really successful brand doing all of the things that he continues to do. And so why risk it at this level? That's what I keep coming back to. Why risk it at this level when you go to Justin Baldoni's complaint? And by the way, like I said, I'm still waiting for the amended complaint. Like, I'm not saying like this person's wrong, this person's right, but I'm so curious after reading all the texts and all the emails, all of this stuff. Why put yourself in a legal position where you could ruin your careers, lose tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, because the lawsuit is for $400 million, one of them. Why do that? Because there is jealousy from a partner. Like, I feel like it's almost too big and unfathomable knowing how hard you have to work to make any sort of dent in Hollywood.
Right. Yeah, that's what a normal person would think. But I think all of this, when you're a controlling person and you get all of this power, I mean, there's some kind of elements to like, how the thing that happened with Diddy. It's like, okay, I'm untouchable. Okay, the laws and rules don't apply to me, and my wife is Khaleesi. Like all this, like like really like grandiose thinking, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to get my way. And by the way, like his jealousy, I really do think that he is blinded by that. I think that he has a lot of unhealed work to do around that, because okay, if you're a jealous person, you get that shit under control. You don't let things snowball, and like the petty stuff, like adding things to the script that were like undercuts to Justin, and
adding the nice pool character to Deadpool,
they're just like placating him all the time, and like I think he's placated to a lot, like, and I know that actually from someone that worked directly with him. So, but I don't want to get into that, but like yeah, but you can even just sense it, right? Like, and it's kind of like, no, that's not how things work. Like, you don't just the rules apply to you. And so I just think it snowballed and got out of hand, and it's all because of this really bad character defect.
I mean, I keep finding it hard to believe that they would do all this. Like, is there any sort of possibility that she truly does believe she was sexually harassed?
From what I can see, I don't see it.
Because you would have to then acknowledge that that's where it's so hard for my brain to accept. And I don't know why. I don't know why it's hard for me to accept that people do bad things, because we have proof that people do bad things. But to me, that's like a bridge too far of like, okay, I can see all of this. I can see being a narcissistic movie star. I can see having people like kind of kowtow to you, and every whim, every desire, is taken care of. Where I have a hard time is then trying to destroy this Baldoni guy. Yeah. That's the part where it's like, it's still hard for my mind to leap over there. And that's why I'm really not looking forward to in a good way, but looking forward to reading that amended complaint, just because I'm like, what do you have? Please tell me you have something. Please tell me you have something, which is so hard, especially when it comes to women. And, we're told to believe all women, that, I don't know. It's so tricky to me still.
I know. And it's just, I mean, like I was saying with, like the Diddy's type of thing, it's like, if I don't get my way, I am going to make you suffer. I don't do that. And so, I don't know enough about Ryan's person. There's so much that's come out about Diddy. It's really easy to surmise that he's a sociopath or has sociopathic tendencies or defense mechanisms. But I mean, Ryan is starting to give a lot of that from what we're finding out in his control issues and how vindictive he can be if any perceived like
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly to everything I just said, but
allegedly, yes.
allegedly, but it is giving a lot of that. So, and
it's hard. They made an appearance at SNL. They made an appearance at SNL 50 last night on the red carpet and in the show. They had a little bit. And I will say, it was something that took me immediately out of the show. I felt like, oh, maybe not the right time. And I would have said this if Justin Baldoni made a guest appearance as well. I'd be like, I don't want to deal with this. Now, like, listen, they have both, I believe, hosted SNL before. So I understand why they were invited in the first place. I do understand they're big stars. But sometimes I was like, God, let SNL have their moment without being like the majority of the conversation surrounding 50 years. Now, I don't know if SNL wanted to have that moment and wanted to be a part of that conversation, but it was so weird for me as, I was like, it just really took me out. And Ryan doing his little funny Ryan Reynolds thing of like, hey, what'd you hear? It was just awkward. And I don't know if it was the right time, but I guess if you're a star, it's never, you're like, hey, we got to keep being out there, keep acting like nothing's wrong.
I think it's a defensive thing like narcissists and sociopaths do, where they're like, I didn't do anything wrong and I'm just going to carry on. And everyone, it was so cringy. That was so cringy to watch. I was watching clips of it and I was just like, this is so cringy. But to them, it's kind of like, oh, we're going to carry on. Yeah, I'm the victim and whatever. Just everyone not think about my behavior. It's just, yeah, it was inappropriate.
So pretty much they're going to get their own Bravo reality show within a year.
Well, they're going to have to go on Bravo because they'll need to pay.
Well, I mean, listen, Alec Baldwin's going on TLC next week. We have the Baldwins premiering on TLC with Hilaria Baldwin, Hillary from Boston. And that's going to be interesting to see if we see any real behavior out of them or it's completely like a puff edit, making them look like a magical family. And it'll be great because even if it is that edit, we always kind of can read between the edits. You always sense, like you've been talking about this last hour, of you sense something, you see something is off, askew, it doesn't feel right. And so the audiences are really savvy these days where we can feel it even if somebody's faking it.
And you know what I always say? People always play themselves out, especially in this day of like technology and everything that we have access to. And then, some people are like, oh, the age of Aquarius. I don't know what it is, but the truth is coming out. This whole thing with Diddy has been going on forever. I've been hearing rumors about this and like, here we are. And then the TLC, who else was on TLC? 18 Kids and Counting. And they played, that whole spot got blown up. Because of, and I knew it. I knew when I looked at those boys and how they behaved compared to the women, the children on the show. I'm like, oh, but it took whatever, like 10 years. But
you're talking about the Duggars, right?
The Duggars.
Yeah.
And so it will play itself out, even if they try to do, the edit of we're just this perfect family. It will play itself out. I'm sure of that.
Well, oh man, life, it can be so complicated sometimes and hard. And that's why you need to do the work. And you can do that with Lauren by checking out her YouTube videos, also her website, which I'm going to post, and also follow her on Instagram because, I think she's wanting to highlight some of the YouTube videos as well. And, I always have the best conversations with Lauren. I always learn something, and I think that's really an exciting prospect. So if you like this conversation, I would say, maybe go down the rabbit hole a little bit more and see what you respond to and see if something kind of piques your interest in trying to better yourself. The world is in a really weird place right now, and, we don't have a lot of power sometimes over global issues at this point or even at home, but we do have kind of control and autonomy, hopefully, of ourselves and our minds and trying to be better. So what do you have going on right now over there?
I have a course on healing from narcissistic abuse and toxic relationships. I just did another round of it. I'm really excited, but the course is there for you to take anytime. And then I'm just doing a lot more on YouTube, like going live to answer people's questions, which is super fun. I love that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I really like it. So if you guys have questions, please DM me. I'm really responsive, and then I'll answer the question. I'll announce when I go live. And then, I'm always trying to create content that's helpful. It's kind of like, if you can't work with me directly, here's like, digital therapist for you. So yeah, but always ask me questions, and my courses are there. I am available to work with one-on-one as well.
If you see a narcissist, if you see something, say something, as I always say. And if you identify a narcissist, Lauren, is it true that you report them to the police immediately?
Immediately.
Yeah, but Lauren has to put up with all my stupid jokes over the years. But I always now, just away from what you do, what do you like to watch for fun? Like, are you watching anything? What do you, in terms of pop culture, what do you allow in that you can just purely enjoy without thinking about a bigger purpose?
Yeah, so because of what I do, like for work, it could get really dark, and like I love working with people and helping them, but outside of that, I like to laugh. So if I'm going to consume things, I want them to make me laugh. And so I do watch a lot of things that make me laugh. White Lotus just came out again.
I just watched. Did you watch the first episode?
No, I want to binge it. Like,
okay, I just watched the first episode, and I will say a little bit of a darker start than, but really well done. But like you said, I wish I had that second and third episode to immediately watch to see, because there's so many good storylines and characters introduced that I'm so excited. Wait, do you watch Severance?
I started to get into it, and then I'm like, I know everyone's like, watch it. You know what? A show I like though is Shrinking. That show is hilarious, even though it's.
I haven't started that, even though people recommend that to me all the time.
I would not watch it, and then I'm like, finally, fine. I had too many people, and I was like, this is so well written. It's like about a subject that's kind of dark, but it is so funny. I'm like, this is brilliant. So I would have. So I'm waiting for that. Actually, I think maybe the season's done. So anyway, but so good.
Well, I'm really bummed that you didn't continue on with Severance, because I so enjoy that show. But you tried again.
I just watched a couple of episodes, so I'm going to let it breathe.
Yeah, come on. I would love your takes on the second season, especially. Lauren Clayton, folks, I'm going to put all of her information. Go check her out. And we got to do this much sooner next time. This is always so enlightening.
Yeah, this is so fun. Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
Thank you.